XU 96.1 FM, Po People's Revolutionary Radio. I'm JV, and you're listening to Free Aslan. And, the topic today is pig terror. We're going to be talking about pig terror on the streets and in prison. Um, you know, um, as we know, as the listeners know, that the pig terror exists in many different forms, and it all stems from national oppression. National oppression, some people may call it, you hear people, you rarely hear somebody say national oppression unless they're politically conscious, unless they're revolutionary minded people. But most people are conscious of some kind of contradiction in society. Um, and usually it's explained or described as racism, discrimination. These things are soft, watered down words for national oppression. This is what it is. When you boil that down, what is racism? What is discrimination? And you see that it's one nationality. Um, and in this case, for us here in the United Snakes, it would be the white oppressor nation. You don't really hear racism of, you know, um, black folks are racist against Asian, or, Chicanos are racist against Asian. We don't hear that. We have to be, and it's very hard because, there are some, very few, but a small handful of white folks, and they're mostly our allies who, they stand with us, absolutely, and they assist us in many different ways. And again, I've spoken about this before. These are folks that have committed national suicide. They went against their own national interests of white power here in the United States, and they have made a conscious decision to aid and assist, brown and black folks in oppressed nations, folks, I should say, in their quest for justice in all arenas. And so that's what it really is. This is the heart of it. This is what it is. But of course, in society, these terminology have been created to water down our social reality. One of the ways they do it is by saying racism or discrimination. And in reality, it's the white oppressor nation oppressing the Chicano nation, the Black nation, the First Nations, and other oppressed peoples here. And so this is what it really is, politically speaking. This is the reality. But of course, the state wouldn't say that or promote it. Instead, they promote words like racism, which is very bland in general and can be applied to everybody. But the reality is, we know where this comes from. We know what it is, and this is why they don't like shows like Free Aslan, who tell you the reality. This is what we're dealing with. Don't listen to the news, the world news, and and all that stuff that's going to tell you these watered down things. But so that's what we're dealing with. And national oppression, is out in the streets. It's also in the concentration camps, aka prisons. And so, and national oppression exists in different forms, from from you can't have this job, from you can't do this or live here, all the way up to murder, killing people, murdering people. That's national oppression, and that's what it is. It is what it is. And so this is what we've been dealing with since colonization, since the arrival of the European colonizer. This is what we've been dealing with. Before that, we didn't have brown folks running the streets, arresting and murdering, lynching other non-white folks. Let's be real. We didn't have black folks coming together and lynching Chicanos and First Nations and arresting them, giving them life sentences. We didn't have none of that stuff. It came when the colonizer came. Be real, be honest. This is what it is. So, we deal with it in many ways. One of the ways is through murder, extermination, genocide. And there's legal murder. We hear it in death row, death penalty. That's still murder. It's just a quote unquote legal version of the genocide that has continued for 500 years. And that's why we don't see death rows filled with white folks. Hell no. Why is that? Wait a minute. There's 200 and something million white folks in the United States. How in the hell are they not the majority on death row? You're telling me they don't do horrific things? Are you kidding me here? But when we go to the death row, we see mostly brown and black folks, and mostly black folks to be specific. So how is that when we're just a small minority of the population, and there are 200 and something million white folks? You mean to tell me they ain't committing these atrocities? Come on. And, they've committed atrocities since the day they stepped foot on this continent or any other land base. So absolutely, it is national oppression. They use a legal version through the prisons, incarceration, through death rows, etc. A lot of people are in there for stuff they never did. We all know the story of the white woman who, calls the pigs on a black or brown person to get them locked up for one reason or the other. It could be a variety of things. She was cool when she was laid up with them, when he was, doing his thing. She loved it. But, let, either her family member find out or, break up or what have you. And all of a sudden, there's some craziness going on, and this is how, the Karens do it. Karens of the world, they've been locking up brown and black folks forever, and they will continue to do so until we acquire national liberation and we are able to, hand out justice, as it will be, and until that day comes, we're going to continue to see national oppression, pigs murdering our people in the streets, pigs murdering our people in the prisons. It's going to continue. Karen's calling the cops because brown and black folks are selling bottled water or barbecuing in a park, and so, we're going to continue to experience this until we get freedom, until we are free. And so, but so this is the topic, the general topic of today's show. I wanted to start off today's show giving a tribute, of some Chicano prisoner who was murdered, actually two prisoners. And, prisoners were murdered in prison during the week. And last week, two prisoners were murdered by the prison guard in the tower. And these were, prisoners just like any other of your neighbors in the community, because I know that people don't listen to Radio Free Aslan that live up in, Los Altos Hills or Bel Air. I mean, let's keep it real. People are listening who feel the show, who live in the environments that understand the topics that are talked about. So, these are the people that were murdered, and, and this is something that, and it's kind of close to my heart because, this is a friend of mine was murdered as well, Mando Quinn from Delano. And, Mando was about roughly my age. He grew up in the system, the concentration camp, just like I did. He was incarcerated at a very early age, I believe 18, somewhere around there, just like I was, even before that. And, he grew up in the type of environment in the barrio of Delano, just like I did over here in San Jose. Same thing, And so, he gets put into the system, into this, school to prison pipeline that they have, AKA national oppression, that targets and hyper polices brown and black communities. Of course, by the white state. Even though they have their token brown and black pigs and, what have you, we know what it is. And this was designed by the colonizer, and then we have folks that are bought off with trinkets and crumbs of high paychecks in order to continue this oppression under other means, in a way to, and then there's class privilege involved in this oppression as well, where you have, people moving up in certain classes, and that support this oppression because it supports their class interests. I hear a lot of Chicano people and other people, Black folks, Asians, non-white folks who, they may own businesses, they may own homes, what have you, who speak good about, when Trump was running, and they spoke good about, well, he's good on taxes, he's good on, and these are folks that really care about taxes because their class interest demands it. They got the money to really, and not only that, there's some people, with a certain amount of money and monetary interests who do side and commit class suicide and side with the oppressed and with the lumpen population, and with the very small proletariat that exists here in these false U.S. borders. This proletariat, I should point out, to be clear, I'm not talking about these union folks who get $100,000 a year. I'm talking about proletariat in these false U.S. borders being field workers mostly. These are the people, the most oppressed workers in society. They don't even have insurance. They have nothing. They don't even have running water, bathrooms, nothing. So this is the proletariat as it exists, for the most part here. And so, again, we got a variety of supporters and allies of the oppressor as well. And so what I'm talking about today, though, this brother Mando Cuen, and I wanted to give, some words, some palabras on Mando. Carnal Mando Quinn, he was, everybody that knows this brother knows that he was a very selfless brother. He was a brother who sacrificed everything he had for the people, behind prison walls, because, as we know, life doesn't stop once you get into prison. A whole nother life exists in there. There's oppression in there. There's predatory behavior, just like there's predatory behavior out here. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then you have good people in there, just like you have good people out here. You have people that sacrifice their lives for other human beings, straight give their lives up for other human beings in prison, and this is the concentrated love that exists within these concentration camps, that if you speak to anybody in any part of the world who's ever been held in a concentration camp, we can ask, and I use this example because for those who've never been to the concentration camp, they've seen enough movies and read enough books and articles to understand what was going on, the social reality of the concentration camps in Hitler's Germany. And we know most people have seen, enough movies and read articles and books on what the Nazis did, to understand that within these concentration camps, even though they were facing death, even though they were facing severe oppression, in all many different forms, even murder, even genocide, they still maintain that human element to reach out to comfort others. I read books where, some of these Jewish prisoners or other political prisoners that were in there it's for the prisoner's birthday, they would make birthday cards. They're facing death in a concentration camp under Nazi Germany. And they would make flowers and make, cards and, create poetry. And they would, in order to comfort their fellow prisoner that was undergoing extreme repression just like them. And they would do these very small things in order to show love in a very unloved environment. And many of us can relate to that. You know, many of us can relate to that, whether you're in prison or outside of prison. You know, you can be in a workplace, and it could be a very cold, sterile place, and you can have coworkers that, you know what, this is horrible. We work in this factory, but it's your birthday. We made a cake. We only make minimum wage, but we got a cake at supermarket, baked it here. Small things. It doesn't cost money to show you're a human being, you know, and the coldness and the, all of that, you know, our people are not like that. Brown and black folks, we're interdependent people. You know, we come from tribal societies way back when. We come from societies that loved one another. That coldness, that comes from the oppressor nation, that has, got into your mind and corrupted it. But anyway, so there's many forms of warm human, kindness that is shown within the prisons. And as I said, you can reflect on Nazi Germany. People would do a lot. They would have little they would sing songs and sing happy birthday, try to comfort those in their last days. And the concentration camps in the California prison system are no different. These things are done the same. Not by everybody, of course, but there are good people in there. One of these good people was our brother, Mando Quinn. And everybody that you've talked to will say, you know what, this brother was a selfless individual. He sacrificed his whole life in there for the people. He took time out of his life of what he was doing to help guide and teach young prisoners so that they don't fall victim to predatory behavior within the prison. He didn't have to do that. He did it because he cared about people. He sacrificed a lot. And, in the end, he sacrificed his life, the ultimate sacrifice. And without even knowing what made him do that, I know that people like that within these concentration camps do that from time to time to protect others. They may be protecting others from a variety of actions. It may be that there's a predator that's identified, identify this, or the person preyed on somebody. And in the prisons, in the concentration camp, there is no courts, the people, through people's courts decide justice and how it's going to be meted out. And justice is issued out from the people. When people are, partaking in acts that, that are crimes against the people, they do taste justice. And usually, it's a very, very severe, because, predatory acts, are very severe as well. And so, without even knowing what happened, I can tell you that this brother would not have sacrificed his life unless it was to save others. And I could tell you 100% that. So, this brother is one of the heroes of imprisoned Aslan, one of the heroes of the Chicano nation that will never be forgotten. It doesn't matter if people are out here, if people are in the concentration camp, a hero is a hero. And if you don't think that's true, then you're brainwashed by the colonizer. You're taking on the colonizer's view. Well, he has a record. He must be a scoundrel. We don't, we live this oppression every day. We're not sitting in some, lofty suburb, reading about the possibilities of oppression. We're breathing it, living it, tasting it, feeling it every moment of our lives since the day we're born. Every time we see a pig, we are reminded of this oppression. And this is what we go through, the oppressed nations. Not these bougie, and again, we got allies, but very few, extremely few, so few that, I mean, very, very few. And so, this is, I wanted to, pay tribute to this brother who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And I wanted to read something from somebody wrote something and sent it into Radio Free Aslan. Somebody that, of course, did not want to be identified because of the oppression involved. Pig oppression, pig terror. When they're targeting people, you could think of anybody that's in the news that you may know. You can think of, most people know who George Floyd is. Yeah, that caused a lot of uprisings across these false U.S. borders. Well, you can imagine people that are speaking on behalf of George Floyd. I knew him, he was my neighbor or what have you. They're probably going to be targeted for that, and I don't mind talking about George Floyd because, I've been targeted since I was 11 years old, when they began targeting me. So then that boat has been launched a long time ago. So, I talk freely about, that's why it's called Free. One of the reasons it's called Radio Free Aslan, because we go, we go, and we have no, there's certain things we can't say, but we say a lot. And we say most than many other people. And this is why, and so there is no, intimidation this way. But, I wanted to read some statement. And for those on the YouTube watching, I'm going to temporarily go into the, the words that were given for this brother and then we will be coming back and with an interview. And so we're going to hear a song, and this is dedicated to Brother Mando and also to imprisoned Aslan. Wind and Fire, and that was for Brother Mando. And so now we're going to move into the second part of the show, and this is an interview with the family of Andre Gladden. This was a black man who was murdered by the pigs, Portland, Oregon, and I have his sister. His sister is going to be here on Radio Free Aslan, and I just want to introduce his sister, D. Martin. You can just call her D. Sister D, and welcome, Sister D. Welcome, D, to Free Aslan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I definitely appreciate it, given the opportunity to speak in reverence of Andre. So it's definitely my pleasure for you having me on tonight.
Absolutely. And some people might know, the story of your brother, who he was. They might even know him, and some people may not, or what happened to him. But before we get into that, I would just like you, if you can, to just, if you could tell us a little bit about your brother, like how was he growing up? What kind of a person, who was Andre Gladden, sister?
Oh, Andre was many things, and many things, especially for me. Andre came from a large family. He was one of seven. He was also a twin of Fonte Gladden. He was the younger of the two. My mother had no idea he was coming until about mid-pregnancy, so he was pretty much a shock and a surprise, as most of his encounters were with individuals. I've never come across a person who said that they didn't like Andre. He was a really open guy. He liked people. He got his energy from people. He was a nature's guy. He loved being in the outdoors, climbing trees, typical goofy big brother. When you have your friends around, he's always there, wants to be seen, jokes. But he was very caring. He was very loving. He took pride in his kids, and not only that, but like I said, a large family. So he has several nieces and nephews, in which he prided himself in being a good uncle, the cool uncle, the fun uncle. He was the type of guy, like I said, with it being seven of us growing up, and Mom would lock us all up in the house while she ran her errands. He would be the one turning the house upside down, making clubhouses out of the mattresses, posting sheets everywhere so we can have little tunnels to go into in the room. And he was just he was a ball of fun, and he had scars all over his body, because he was so into everything. There's a couple of them that we can pinpoint, hey, this is when he jumped out that tree. This is when he was building us the clubhouse. This is when he, the brick fell on his finger. So, because he was trying to make us a clubhouse or something like that. But he was, to me, I'm not saying that he was an angel, but he was my brother. And so I can pinpoint a lot of things and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. That was stupid. But in my eyes, that was Dre. Right. He get caught doing silly things, and my mom would tell him all the time, like, boy, you're going to hurt yourself. Boy, you're going to kill yourself. But he was having fun. He was living his life. He was doing what he knew to do, and he was just enjoying himself. And we loved to see it. He was kind of sort of like the life of the party.
Wow. Yeah.
And everybody loved being around him.
Yeah.
There wasn't a dull moment at all.
Wow. Yeah, he sounds like he'd be very missed. And I think most people can relate, especially guys can relate to that. And Mama's saying, you know better than that. Don't be doing that. You know better than that. Like, you're gonna get, So I when you describe him, I feel that a lot in many different ways, and and someone like that definitely is, the life of the family, and it's sad that he was taken so soon at the hands of the pigs. But some may not know, because a lot of stories are in the news. They're on all over media and what have you. And that's why I like, what I like to do is, I like to talk about the stories people know, but I also like to talk about the stories on this show that people don't hear about, because that's important, and
Right.
And if you could tell us, because some people may not know, what happened to Andre? Like, what, he was murdered. Can you tell us what you want about his last day alive?
Andre was first. I'll kind of get to how he became legally blind in the first place, registered blind. Andre was working, and he would care for a neighbor that lived across the street, and this neighbor had cancer. He and his wife had been dealing with it. And Andre, this is a neighborhood. He's talking to everybody. He knows everyone. So he befriended him and his wife. So every now and again, and Andre drank beer. This neighbor, he also did too. And so he would keep him company, just as a friendship, a companion, to keep him company. And this gentleman happened to be moving out, and Andre was helping him do that. The particular neighborhood, I'm not sure of the history of this gentleman, because this was maybe 2 years after us moving into the community to where he befriended this gentleman. So it was an individual, and Andre did not know this guy, older African-American male. He was in his late mid-60s, approached Andre and asked him for the keys to this property. And Andre said, the house isn't mine. And I can't give you what's not mine. Like, this is my friend's house. I can't give you anything. So, and again, this is without us knowing the history of the actual homeowner versus this individual asking for something that Andre couldn't give. Like I said, Andre was 33 at the time. And the guy was saying some reckless things, and Andre told him, well, you're too old to be fighting, so I'm not going to get up with you. Bring back a nephew or a brother or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I ain't going to get down with you, old head.
Yeah.
This guy happened to have some ladies in the car, which he was kind of showing off in front of.
Oh, okay.
So the guy, and because this young man just kind of showed him up in front of his lady, he felt that, he felt a certain type of way.
Right.
So when Andre said what he said, he was acting, the gentleman acted as if he was going to leave. So he went to the car, and Andre had already turned his back on the situation. Like, I'm not going to give him satisfaction of the doubt. Now, I'm not going to say Andre's no punk and he wouldn't do it. But what I'm saying is he's not going to fight this old man, and he told him that. And the old guy grabbed a shotgun, and within 7 feet away, he shot Andre. And because of the shotgun, the pellets, because it was in such close range, they dispersed, but only to a minimal, to where it hit his torso and up. So it shot out his vision, for one. He had pellets on the brain and the torso, from the torso up. So that's originally how Andre became blind. So we're going to fast forward this all the way until January 6th, 2019. We are, I wouldn't say that we're from Portland, Oregon, but a large portion of our youth was raised in Portland, Oregon. And so we had family there. His father still lives there. We still have relatives that live in Portland, Oregon. So because Andre is blind, he did travel via the Amtrak.
Yeah.
And he would get assistance on and off. And of course, you can hear when it's your time to, board the train or get off. So he boarded this train by himself a little bit somewhere around late December. He was scheduled to come back before the New Year's hit. He went out there to visit family and my cousin, his dad, and what we were made aware of is that there was an altercation between family the morning of January 6th. And this altercation took place between himself and the female cousin that he was residing with during the visit. The police were called. It was determined that Andre was not a threat. He was pretty calm. Yeah, he's a clever young man. Whether this is, a verbal altercation or a lot of, people can say they were fighting, this is verbal confrontation, not physical. So again, they saw no reason to take him in. Andre spoke to, the police. He's a funny guy. He's a comedian, trying to make a joke out of everything, whether it's funny or not. So he may have wiggled his way out of that. But he did end up telling his cousin that I'm going to the store and I'll be back around this time. So that's just to show you how minimal and less severe this altercation was with family. And maybe a few hours into that, the cops received a call came through the dispatch from an individual that we have no idea, saying that there was a man in the bushes with no shirt on, and he looks as though he's not responsive. So these same individual police officers that arrived during the time of this altercation were also the same ones who showed up at this point now, to where they're saying he's in the bushes unresponsive. From that point, he goes to Advantage Hospital, I believe southeast of Portland, Oregon, and he is admitted into the hospital, and this is mid-morning. So Andre's admitted into the hospital, and he has on all of his clothes. The description of what he has on continues to change based on what's been aired or what's been written. However, when he was checked into the hospital, because of how he was found, he was administered Narcan and things that would prevent him from going into a withdrawal of whatever he was on, if he was. And that is still not to be determined. However, he was administered Narcan. Now, I don't know the actual procedure or protocol when an individual is blind, how they disrobe, if they're given assistance or if they're not. This is a new place for Andre. This is the hospital. He's blind. He knows that he's going to the hospital. At that time, the nurses, doctors, no knife was found on him, no weapons found on his person at all. Several hours later, he was released from the hospital, and he's walking. He's on foot. Now, when I say blind, Andre is able to see a silhouette, if it makes any sense, a darkness, as in a motion of someone passing by him, but not able to see, but to feel that someone is in his proximity. As far as face recognition, he cannot see. He knows what these people look like, as far as myself, my mother, my sister, just based on growing up and knowing us. He showed up to this individual's house, and he knocked on the door. And this house is maybe 2 blocks from the initial hospital that he was just released from. And he told this individual that I need help. Somebody's after me, and Ernest told me I could come here to get some help. Andre suffered from schizophrenia, bipolar schizophrenia. Every once in a while, he'll go into crisis. And being at home, we kind of know how to handle that. It's a process. If anybody is familiar with it, you know the triggers, the mood swings, how to calm an individual. It's not telling them that they're wrong or that this is just settling the emotion, listening. But that's not what happened on this situation. And whatever he felt, because he was having a crisis or episode, felt as if someone was after him. He said he had also just been released from the hospital. He had his band on. The hospital gown was protruding from under his clothes, and he had also had on one shoe, and the other tucked under his arm with a multicolored quilt or blanket on. So none of the clothes that he arrived in the hospital with was the clothes that he wore out. The gentleman, Ernest, anybody reading the article would be like, well, who is Ernest? Ernest was his cousin. His name is Ernest Neff. He was also murdered by the Pittsburgh Police Department in 1997.
Wow.
So for him to say, Ernest told me that I can come here, that rang a bell to the family that he was in distress and that he was going through a crisis. And unfortunately, we weren't there to help him at the time through that crisis. The individual told him, I don't know who Ernest is. You can't come inside because apparently he was feeling under the weather. What I was made aware of is that he offered Andre $10, and Andre declined, said that he needed help, that somebody was after him. Andre asked for a glass of water, so the gentleman did Desmond is the gentleman's name who answered the door, told him again he can't come in, he can have a seat on the porch while he goes and gets this water. So apparently Desmond does not go directly to get the water. However, he goes out the back door. This is known to be a halfway house, and he was the only one there at this portion of the day. But the landlord lived in the back. So he went out the back door to let the landlord know this black guy is at the front door and he's a little bit off. What should I do type scenario. She says, what does he want? Call the police. And some other words were exchanged. I'm not sure what that was. She called the police as well as Desmond. The 911 calls had not been released to us to tell the contents of that conversation, to make them aware of Andre's actual situation, or to even convey that he is legally blind, to give them an understanding of how to approach the situation. He comes back. He goes into the house. Apparently, he does not go back out to give Andre the water. Instead, I'm assuming that the direction was given to, leave him where he is until officers arrived. And moments later, officers did arrive. Andre had fallen asleep on this porch. And Andre was waking up in an abrupt way, stating, this is the police, or this is so-and-so. Mind you, he's already going through episodes to where he feels like someone's after him. And for him to be waking up out of his sleep, he's now assuming that, I can only imagine that he's only assuming that whoever he thought was after him has now arrived. So he begins to tell the officer, you're not the effing police, you're not the effing police, who are you? Turns around as I feel as though he's being advanced, turns to bang at the door to get this guy to open the door to help him, because whoever's after him is coming to get him, so he's trying to get out. The gentleman opens the door, and he's blocking the doorway as Andre's telling him, this guy is so-and-so, he says he's police, he's trying to get me. He's like, dude, he's not the police, I called him. And he's like, he's not the police, he's not the police. Mind you, he's blind, he can't see.
Wow.
He has no idea who this person is. They just say that they're the police.
Wow.
So there's a scuffle that takes place at the doorway to where Desmond gets a stick or a cane or a piece of tree that he's trying to craft into a cane. And he proceeds to attempt to try to beat Andre with this cane to get him from going into the house, as the officer is advancing him, pushing him in one direction. And so Andre manages to get through the door. The officer did tell Desmond, shut the door. Don't let him in. The gentleman says, I'm not shutting the door, because if he beats down the door or breaks the door or does anything, I'm not going to be responsible for what happens next. So Andre proceeds to make his way, this little guy. Andre's about maybe 5'7", about 134, 136. He pushes past Desmond. There's a few articles that will show images of this individual, but he's about maybe a good 3'10", about 6'4".
Wow.
so, and the officer, I would say he's probably about 5'7", and just given an estimate of weight somewhere around 200 pounds.
Mm.
They said Andre pushes past Desmond to where he slips and falls on the floor, face forward.
Mm.
But they said that Andre, they tried to get him onto his stomach, which he fell forward, which means he's on his stomach. But that he lifted his leg and kicked the officer in his torso, bagging him up to the rear of the house. So if you're laying on your torso, you can't lift your foot up and kick, but you kick it back.
Right.
So it's just the whole demeanor of how they explain this. If you're not paying attention to the things that they're saying, the narrative that they're drawing, you'd be like, oh, wow, how'd that happen? And I'm like, it's physically impossible the way that they explained it, but we're going to just take this at face value because these are trustworthy, law-abiding officers.
Wow.
We're just going to take it like that.
Yeah.
And so he says that Andre manages to turn himself over, and the officer is now on his back with Desmond, and the officer, consider Vasu, asks Desmond to help him apprehend Andre. Desmond says, I couldn't do much, but I put my foot on his neck to help the officer handcuff Andre.
Wow. And that's
well,
coming from Desmond?
What was that?
You said Desmond said that?
Yes. Desmond
did
mentions that this is the way that he assisted Andre in being apprehended by the police.
Yeah.
So when you got this big officer, you got this big guy, and Andre manages to escape. You know, adrenaline is a whole nother thing. We all know how that works.
Right.
But we're just going to leave it there. It was said that Andre backed this officer into a corner bedroom and advanced at him with a knife. And he was afraid for his life. He issued a warning to drop the knife or he'll shoot or he'll tase. Andre did not drop the knife is what he's saying. He tased him and nothing happened. He says he tased him again and the knife dropped to the right. And Andre managed to go to the ground, find this knife, pick it up, and advance him again. And he says that at that moment, he knew that his life was in danger. He said that he would shoot. Andre didn't listen, and he shot 3 shots. 2 went center mass. Is the only way that they're trained to target, not the legs, the arm, to slow them down, none of that, but center mass. The third went over the shoulder of the witness, Desmond. He said he didn't know after Andre dropped from that second shot, he didn't know if Andre was still alive, but he saw that he was breathless. And when he fell to his foot, he saw the knife. He said the knife looked familiar, and he picked it up.
And do we know who called the pigs in this case? Who called?
So the person who called the police was the landlord who lived in the back of the house, and also Desmond Piscaya.
Wow. And that's, to me, that's like, that's pretty much blood on your hands. When you call the pigs and the pigs kill somebody, you have blood on your hands. I mean, you are an accomplice to murder, 100%. And that's very important because a lot of times we focus on the pigs, and that's important, but a lot of people forget those who call the pigs who end up killing the person as well. And that's something we can never forget. And that's something that they need to be held accountable as well. And they need justice in their life as well. So, but we got about a minute left, sister. And, I just want to ask very quickly, is there any kind of outcome in this case, did they get penalized, the pigs? And then also, if you could give people, if you have any contact information, if people want to get involved in the, in the movement for justice for Andre, if you have any contact information where people could come, they can volunteer. I know you guys are trying to get a lawyer as well, so if you want to add that contact info as well.
Correct. We do have the Facebook page is called Justice for Dre. There are a ton of anybody that wants to get information in regards to Andre and what the narrative is versus what the police are saying and the actual facts. That information is listed on the Justice for Dre Facebook page, but the articles are all, pretty much all over the place. They all tell a totally different story. However, they manage to get some things in line with each other. But for the most part, there was absolutely no penalty for Consider Vasu. He received the same vacation as many of the other officers get. Yeah. Just the paid vacation. He actually opted out of the initial investigation to begin with, and with his own attorney saying that he, even though he mentioned to the investigators that arrived on the scene, that also questioned why the knife was placed how it was after he stated that Andre dropped the knife and it fell flat. Why was there 3 different fingerprints on the knife? So for it to be Desmond's fingerprint, the officers, and Andre was legally blind. There is absolutely no way that this knife came from Andre. They're saying that what happened was that the knife, Andre took the knife off their tactical vest. And so now, back in July of 2020, there's a new policy that's been implemented that officers are only allowed to utilize utility knives in the event that they need to cut someone out of their seatbelt. That's the only policy that has been implemented since then. That officer had maybe 3 knives on his person, and it took them all but 2 weeks to say that knife belongs to me. Well,
thank you, sister. We run out of time, but yeah, I mean, from an outside perspective, my personal opinion, it's not the radio, not anybody else. My personal opinion, when I hear that story, sounds like Desmond. I mean, it sounds like Andre. That was not his knife. And if the Prince of Desmond, this cop caller. And we're against cop callers here at, Free Aslan, as we know. And so, it sounds like this, if his prints are on there, then what the hell, how are they going to blame it on Andre? But of course, this is what they do when they murder people. But with that being said, sister, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing Andre's story to the listeners, Free Aslan, and also we're going to have you back on for a full hour as we talked about. I think that, there's a million under. They do this to us, brown and black folks, all the time. And then they blame us, And then what's very interesting is the people, the initial cop callers, they're never even focused on. I think that needs to change. And I think that when, these lawsuits come out on people, on the pigs, I think that the cop callers need to be held accountable as well. And, there's long documentation of all cop callers. And, one day, sister, when we are free, we will see real justice take place as well, because we need peace in our hearts. Our family members have been through so much. And just so you know, my cousin was also murdered by the pig. So I feel you. I'm there with you, and we support you. We're going to be here with you, and we'll have you back, sister.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right, then, D. You have a good night, sister.
You as well.
Bye. Bye. And that was Sister of Andre Gladden, and that was the fabulous Miss D. Martin. And she's a fighter for her brother, for brother Andre Gladden. And she's been, on the front line, in this struggle for justice, just like everybody else, all freedom fighters. But that being said, this is it. We've run out of time, and we will see you next week. Be safe. Watch out for them pigs and watch out for them cop collars. Free Aslan O Mateo.